All right, so we've reached the pinnacle of zombie movies. This is the most famous zombie movie, I think. This was the turning point. This is what made zombie movies a genre. This is Dawn of the Dead. Just to address something off the bat, I've never addressed it in one of my videos. Why do I use a telephone instead of a microphone? Well, reason number one, I'm cheap and I don't want to buy a mic setup. Reason number two, iPhone works just fine in my opinion. Reason number three, I like holding on to something as I review. I like cradling the telephone like it's a small kitten as I review films. Dawn of the Dead. Sorry, I don't know what that was. So Dawn of the Dead, movie came out in 1978. Romero's been away from the zombie genre for 10 years, but he came back with a vengeance. This movie is amazeballs. Plenty of reviews of this movie up on the internet, so I don't know what else there is to add, really. First of all, just to set the film up, this is a really difficult movie to get your hands on. It's out of print, so it's not on Blu-ray to my knowledge, and the DVD is very expensive. I couldn't get this film on any streaming service or any rental service online, so unfortunately I had to get an illegal copy from the internet. That's really sad because this movie is a classic, and I'm sure if it was more accessible, more people would be talking about this film. People still talk about this film, obviously, but I'm sure it would be more in the mainstream. I'm sure this would be a classic horror film the same way we look like at Nightmare on Elm Street or Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something like that. I'm sure this would be equally in the mainstream had it just been more accessible. Film also has plenty versions. I think the version I watched this time was the theatrical cut. It was 120 minutes-ish. There's a version that was released just for Italy, and there's been other director cuts, extended cuts, and stuff like that. Romero says the definitive version is the theatrical version, so I think that's the one I watched. This movie has an overall theme of over-consumerism. Romero likes social commentary in his film. I've said it, I think, on every video so far. And this one, he talks mostly about consumerism. First of all, this movie came out in 1978, which was a very gluttonous, very excessive time period. The late 70s and early 80s, all I think about is cocaine, STDs, partying, synth music. So it was a very gluttonous time when it's portrayed in film anyway, and from what I've understood and gathered. I haven't lived through the time, but the movie is basically a commentary on that kind of thing. They have the zombies walking around in the mall, and they're playing like cheesy shopping mall music, and George Romero is basically poking fun at society, saying this is what society looks like when they go to the mall. We're just a bunch of brain-dead idiots. And it works in this film. And there's even that scene in the film where two of the main characters go to a shop and start stealing money, and they're like, well, we never know what's going to happen. The economy might bounce back. But anyway, this film also has a very optimistic view of what would happen during a zombie apocalypse. So this follows Night of the Living Dead. Night of the Living Dead was basically the outbreak of the virus. This one takes place a little while after that. So some stuff are still running, but the economy is pretty much dead. You go on, the shopping mall is basically empty. There's just a few things that are still open. Like there's still news reports on the TV, but it feels very rough. The set's all destroyed. The news reporter is some guy with an eye patch. So it's not quite apocalypse there, but it's almost the like point of no return, which is a pretty interesting place to frame your zombie movie. So, what about this movie do I like? Basically, everything about this movie. The gore in this movie is really fun to watch. There's that famous head explosion scene, which everyone thinks of. But the blood is very not realistic. It's very fluorescent red, almost orange. And that again feeds into the theme of over-consumerism and gluttony and over-excessiveness. And it works. And I like how Romero uses gore to reflect the themes of his movies. He does that later on in his career too. Not to get too much into it. I also like the opening of this film. It opens, you're right in the thick of the action. That whole SWAT invading the apartment scene was really hard to watch. And the SWAT team is getting PTSD on the spot. They're puking. People are just losing their minds, and it's total chaos. And from the beginning of the movie, you think it's going to be a very bleak movie. But it's not really. Like, once they arrive in the mall, once our four characters arrive in the mall, they have Romero is very optimistic about a situation like that. He basically asks himself what would happen if there was a zombie apocalypse, and imagines a future where we're all in this together and we've all got each other's backs, which is really nice. So one example of this is one of the characters gets bitten. Spoiler, unfortunately, sorry. But one of the characters gets bitten, and it takes 3 days approximately to become a zombie. And instead of just whacking him because he's slowing down the crew, they try to give him like a nice 3 more days. They bring him to the arcade. They like push him around in a little wheelbarrow. They try to take care of him when the symptoms of the zombie start emerging. So it's a very hopeful view of what would happen during a zombie apocalypse, which is it really felt good to watch, because during this whole pandemic, I'm talking about the real pandemic outside, everyone's been a little selfish. You know, fucking Karens at Walmart punching toilet paper out of kids' hands. It felt very good to watch an optimistic view of what a pandemic would cause and how humanity could come together and fight it. So that's not really even done in modern zombie movies. I can't think of a movie off the top of my head that does that. The characters in this movie are also very smart. They don't make stupid decisions. The only stupid decision I can think of is when they off the zombies and they're complaining that the mall is starting to stink and they have to like put the bodies in a better place. Instead of chunking them outside, which is what I would have done, they put them in the freezer next to like the food, which is kind of gross. Note to self, don't put dead bodies in the freezer next to your food. Too late, I've already done that. No, I haven't done that. I'm sorry. This is a gross joke. Great cameo by Tom Savini in this movie. Tom Savini is like well known in Hollywood movies for doing some great gore effects, and he worked on this movie, and he also plays in this movie. And he gets outed pretty nastily. He gets his guts eaten out hardcore, which was really fun to watch. That whole segment where the biker redneck gang comes in the mall and wreak havoc, it's really fun to watch. They're fucking doing everything to these zombies, from shooting them in the head to throwing pies in their face. It's really fun to watch. It's a really fun film, and it's like a fantasy of everyone, like to be in an empty mall with no one else there. It kind of plays on that fantasy that everyone has, which is another interesting concept. The score is also pretty good in this movie. So the score is a mix of many things, but the parts of the score I especially liked are the ones parts done by the band Goblin. Which also did the music to some of Dario Argento's movies. Who, by the way, Dario Argento worked on this film and edited the Italian release of this film. But yeah, the score really worked in here. And I'm a big fan of the band Gorillaz. And I've noticed there was a part of the score in this film that was sampled by Gorillaz. So yeah, that was a little interesting tidbit of fun I got in this film. The first time I watched this film, I gave it an 8. I thought it was a really good zombie movie. But upon rewatching it, it really grew on me. And maybe it's because we're in such a bleak time right now, and I feel like everyone's for themselves. And it felt good to watch a movie where humanity is helping each other out. So I don't know, maybe it hit me in a different way than I initially watched it. But that's the beauty of films, you know? Your opinion on a film can change. We're human beings. Our brains are Play-Doh. You can mush them in any way you want. There's so many people on the internet that are like, oh, you said this was a 7, but now you say it's an 8, and then you said it's a 6. I'm like, yeah, fuck it, man. Like, my opinions change. I'm inconsistent. What do you want me to do? You know? Jeez. I can't even decide when I want to eat most of the time. This morning I woke up, I said I want to eat pork for dinner. I ended up eating 200 pounds of ramen. You know? What's the big deal? I change. Suck it. Nah, don't suck it. Nah, I'm nice, you know. Take it easy. But Dawn of the Dead, Romero's pinnacle film, giving it a 9 out of 10. Great time. I suggest you watch it if you haven't already, but I'm sure if you're watching this series and you're a zombie fan, you've probably seen Dawn of the Dead already. But yeah, that's it. Stay tuned for some more great zombie reviews.
We are down to the line, folks. We are down to the line.